Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast, where we interview remarkable people and share strategies for mastering money and living a meaningful life. With your host, Grant Sabatier, creator of Millennial Money and author of Financial Freedom, a proven path to all the money you will ever need.
This episode is brought to you by Policygenius.com. If you have a family that relies on your income, then you should definitely have term life insurance. Unfortunately, less than 10% of millennials have life insurance, and I don't blame them. I've always been personally leery of life insurance salesmen, but thankfully, with companies like Policygenius, you can compare quotes from the top life insurance companies all in one place. So if you're one of the many people looking to buy life insurance right now, but you're not sure where to start, head to Policygenius.com. Policygenius will help you find the best rate and handle the process completely. They'll get you and your family protected and hopefully give you one less thing to worry about. 100% of the proceeds of this episode will be donated to the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley, foodbankofhudsonvalley.org. Really excited to chat with Vincent Pugliese, the author of Freelance to Freedom. I've gotten to know Vincent a little bit and his work over the past year and a half. Got to meet him in person on my book tour in Arizona, and really excited to have him on the show and at the summit and to dive deep into his history and talk about how to build a life you love. So Vincent, welcome.
Thank you, I totally appreciate this. It was so cool meeting you out in Phoenix, and this is going to be fun.
Tell everyone a little bit about your background as a photographer and how did you start building a life that you love?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes. You know, so much of our life has been built off of that. The mistakes. Everybody's looking for the, what's the quick fix or what's the 7 steps or whatever. And I don't believe in that. Every great thing came from, I have a saying, it's like bad choices make great stories. And all the great stories that people ask about come from choices that we made that were probably challenging to others that they wouldn't have felt comfortable doing. But the more you do it, the more you realize life, as long as it's not fatal, we learn from it. And that's where it came from me. I was a loser. It really is. I was a terrible student. I didn't get along with my parents. I had nothing to make anybody think that anything would come from my life besides mediocrity. And I remember my brother even saying, like, once things started going good, he goes, I'll be honest with you, like, I was worried. I was like, what's he going to do? And I was in my 20s. This wasn't like a 14-year-old. I was 21. I was wondering what he was going to do. But I learned that school wasn't for me. I learned that the normal way of education wasn't for me. But it was hard to understand that because I was into sports. Like, I'm not anymore, but I was really into sports. And it's not like any teacher ever said to me, if you could be a sports photographer, you could be a reporter, you could be on the field getting paid around the people that you want to be around and living a life that you love. They have said, no, you need to read this book as opposed to read what you want to read. So I struggled. And that's why we even homeschool now for that reason. So I struggled all through those years until when I was 22, I had been arrested. I'd been 5 different majors in college. I was terrible. And my dad said something to me, he basically said to me, he said, I said, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I just had another nightmare of I was getting caught stealing again. And he goes, you like sports, you like traveling, you like taking pictures. Why don't you take a photography class? And it was that simple. And I had said to myself, well, I'm going to fail at this because I failed at everything, but at least I could say I failed at something cool because I'd never tried that before. And I went all in, and that's literally how it all began for me. And from one life to the next.
So for photography, it's a really creative, obviously it's a creative endeavor. I think there's connections between photography or writing and certainly building a life that you love in the sense that you're able to kind of hammer and forge and, it's much more fluid than the sort of normal path that we've been taught. So you brought up a point that you homeschool your kids, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that and why you made that decision, and probably more importantly, what are you teaching them about life? I know you just got back from a long road trip, I think a couple of months. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we do that every winter. That's when we met you. We were out west, but every winter, Christmas, we pack up Christmas and we hit the road. We live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania winters are rough, and we love traveling, and we love seeing the country. We love exploring and teaching them, like, the world doesn't revolve around your physical house. And so many people are like, well, I'm from here, so we do it this way. And it's, to us, it wasn't, everybody talks about school. What are you learning in school? We learned so much more meeting people and meeting different types of people and living in different areas. And so we decided that's going to be our life, that we do. We spend life like that. The decision came around, we weren't thrilled with the way that they were learning in school. Our kids were good students. They did what was told, but we learned that we never succeeded just doing what people told us what to do. That didn't
Yeah.
work out well for me. My wife was a great student. I was a bad student, and we wound up in the same newspaper photography job. She used to make fun of me because of my grades. And I said, you can't really make fun of me. We got the same job.
Right.
And she's like, wait a second. And so then we kind of, when we got entrepreneurial and realized we can create whatever life we want. We can build financial freedom, as you know, right? We can build time freedom, location freedom. Why in the world would, as entrepreneurs, would we build that and then put our kids into a system that teaches them the exact opposite? When the bus shows up. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm drawing the connection to your book, Freelance to Freedom. And, a number of people who are listening to or watching this right now, we're all stuck at home. People just want to get out. They can't even imagine, maybe taking the entrepreneurial leap or pursuing another path. But, you bring up the great point where growing up, our parents or teachers, everyone says, ask, what do you want to be? And, you have these big dreams, but all of a sudden, as you go through middle school and high school and college, a lot of those dreams, they often get dampered by either A, the need to eventually make money, or B, the fact that there's a risk in pursuing what you're passionate about or a creative pursuit. But then you get a little bit older and you realize, as you just said, the people who are on the sidelines taking photos or writing books, like, people actually do these things. I mean, it's like, people, and oftentimes they're people from a very diverse background. What would you advise someone who that now, because they're quarantined, or maybe they realize the life they were living before this was stressing them out, and now they want to build a different life? What are some steps you'd recommend they take?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's different for a lot of different people, right? Do you have kids? Do you have bills that you're paying? Are you just getting started out? I think this is a beautiful thing, aside from, there's so much devastation that comes with this, which is brutal financially, people that are sick. But for people that aren't in that boat, even the ones that financially are getting hit, this is such a wake-up call. For us to be able to say, people are like, oh, how are you guys dealing with this? And we're like, we run our business from wherever, and we homeschool. And our income is going up during this, not saying that like, oh, bragging, whatever. Like, we've been thinking about this life for years. This is, I guess, one piece of advice. We always said, how do we build this to where if it all went away tomorrow, we're in good shape to build the next thing? And I really think it's challenging yourself to not get stuck in, well, this is the way I always do things. When things are at their best, I'm looking to kill it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really am, because I'm like, I want to constantly be challenged. I want to constantly be on my toes, because that makes me very adaptable to whatever the situation is. So for instance, with what's going on right now, we've had so many questions about homeschooling. Now, the people that we would talk to aren't the ones that are going to send their kids right back to school, that are like, I got to put the wine down and send the kids back. Like, those aren't the people. What we're talking to are the people that are like, wait a second, my kid's a lot calmer being home. They're not getting bullied. They're not as anxious. They're actually reading. You know how many people are saying, like, I could never get my kids to read, but now that it's quiet, they're picking up books. Cool. That's what we teach, is like self-learning, self-discipline in terms of figuring things out. We don't look at ourselves as the teachers. We look at ourselves as the guides. We're guiding them towards the things that they love. So that's a whole different thing in terms of like a career thing. But I think this is a great opportunity you can build a business from anywhere now. And there's so many excuses why you can't. This is I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago called This is History. It's basically, which end of history you're going to end up on, right from this. Are you going to drop off and become the ones that suffer? Or are you going to go create something now that you've always wanted to create, that you can't have any bias anymore. You can build it with your phone without anybody seeing you. There's no more excuses. So It's amazing time.
The act of creating anything, whether it's a business or writing or a podcast or a family, that act of creation inherent with it is obviously the constant nature of change. And I mean, the only constant in life certainly is change. And I've found that the most successful entrepreneurs, often the happiest people, tend to roll with the punches. They ebb and flow, and those first couple of knocks, they might be big. Maybe they got laid off, a couple times like I did. Maybe they had to move back home with their parents like I did. Maybe they got fired. But eventually you get to a point where you've been beat up enough that things just start to, they don't phase you as much. It's a much more fluid life, and it's hard to envision when you're not in it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to, launch this summit, is so people could ideally face to face meet others who are building lives they love. That doesn't mean everything's perfect. That doesn't mean they're happy all the time. It's just being in control not only is a lot more fun, but it protects you in situations like this, where probably a master homeschooler, you said your business is growing. And so at a time when so many are struggling, you've insulated yourself and your life from external forces, it sounds like.
Well, in the best you can, right? You never know. Fortunately, we weren't one of the ones that was hit, right? If we were still in the photography world, which we're not, it'd be brutal right now. I know so many friends that are it's just gone, right? Yeah. But we saw 5 years ago, we want to build something that's more diverse. I think it was Patrick Lencioni that said that if 10% or more of your income comes in from one source, you're in trouble. And I remember hearing that and being like, that's a frightening thing to hear, especially when you go through school to get a job.
Yeah.
Because I know people 3 months ago, they're like, I am fine, I am recession proof. And then they message me, I lost my job. And so what we said is multiple streams of income. How do we do this? And how do we build it toward doing the things that we love doing and outsourcing over time the things that we don't like doing, so we can spend more time. And then from there, when you're very niched, you can build off of those niches and create different income streams at different price points, to where if certain things go away altogether, it doesn't matter. And that allows you to be more bold in who you are in terms of the work that you do. You get to turn away the clients you don't want to work with.
Yep.
I hate working with pain in the what clients. Hate it. So I don't want to work with them. I want to work with the specific people that I get energy from, but I could never do that when I needed the money.
Right.
I could never do that. And I want people to get to that point where they can do that. And it's just a happy, like you said, it's never perfect. Right. The kids, we homeschool, my kids drive us crazy. We will threaten them. You're going back to school. Like, do you see that bus coming out at 6:40 in the morning? Like, if you don't get it together, like, you'll be back there.
That's awesome.
So,
right. Yeah, it's funny. I love that. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about income streams. How have you created them? How can others create them? I mean, so many people have that one income stream and couldn't imagine either starting a side hustle or building a coaching business. And I'm going to tack on to that question. How do you make money doing something that you love? And I asked Chris Gillibo this question a couple of weeks ago, and I'd love your take on it, because I think there's a big difference between making money doing something that is a grind that you don't like to do. And a lot of people can't even imagine making money doing something that they love. In your case, it was photography, and now coaching and writing. And can you talk about how you can make that shift?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of ways we can go with it. First of all, I say two things. The reason why we've been able to be successful in different areas is two reasons. I don't need much, and I don't care what you think. And I wish more people could have that. I don't need much. We can lose so much of our income, and aside from the ego hit, it wouldn't really affect me at all. We're a very simple family.
Yep.
And I don't want to spoil my kids. So I don't need a big giant house for them to, we have a good sized house, but we don't need more. We love traveling, but if that went away, suck it up, right? Let's go build something else. So I don't need much. And so it makes us really grounded in terms of like, yeah, this is nice, but prepare like it's going to go away. So you're going to invest. You're going to invest in yourself. We spend a lot of money on ourselves in terms of investing in ourselves, things to make our business grow. So that and not caring what you think is the biggest part of it. Like people do so many things because they worry about what their mom's going to say, or they worry about what their neighbors are going to think. I don't care.
Right.
And I'd never have cared. And it got me in trouble in school, but it made me a very successful adult, because people go, oh, it's just really you. Like when I meet you in person, that's what I hear on the podcast, because I can't be phony.
Right.
All I envision are my high school friends being like, who are you trying to be? I don't even talk to them anymore, but I could hear them making fun of me, like trying to be something I'm not. So this is who I am. This is how I dress. I'm not going to be flashy because I don't want to be. So when you can do that, you can literally create what you want to create. And what it came down to, a couple things for us. Everybody's like, oh, never work for free. I think that's the biggest load of garbage in this world that I've ever heard. And I don't know if you agree or disagree, but it's like everything we've built, from photography to the coaching to the masterminds to the community, it's all been done for free at first.
Right.
Because we figured it out. Even writing the book, I gave the PDF of my book away to hundreds and hundreds of people when I was writing it, because I wanted feedback. Well, they wound up buying the book, leaving reviews. It helped take the book off. But if I was like, I can't give it away because this is my property, they would have never read it. Same thing. I get on coaching calls. When I was beginning, I would spend all day. I became a better coach. And they wound up saying, hey, you should talk to my friend Dave. Well, then Dave's like, how much do you charge? I'm like, oh, I didn't charge it. Okay, $200. Right. And that's how it starts.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think for me, it's more about just do what you love, and the money will come secondary, at least at this phase in my life. And I think you're absolutely right that you can just learn an immense amount just getting out there and trying things. A lot of people think they won't like something that they actually end up liking. And a lot of people are irrationally afraid because they haven't done something before. You know, a good example is just before this pandemic, I went skiing for the first time. And I'm 35 and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was like, why have I not been skiing for the last 20 years? You know, I grew up, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and so we couldn't go skiing or anything like that. And now I love it. And I'm just like, I would never have taken that risk before. And now I've added something that has, added so much joy to my life just at the age of 35 that I never would have expected. And, the same thing with income streams. It's just, you don't know what you're not going to like or what you're going to like. And often surprise is the most fun, part of the entire journey. So I know that you're a coach and you spend a lot of time, helping others. And so much of financial freedom, pursuing financial independence, has to do with really freedom of mind. And that's what I hear in what you say. You don't care what other people think. You have a very rooted sort of core, and you're rooted in your family, and you like your life, and it's you're free in your heart. And I'm sure you're secure in yourself, and that you can give everything away because you're always changing, and what you're going to create is always going to change. And so there's no risk. It's like, I'm going to have more to say than this. I'd love to hear, in people that you coach, what are some of the biggest hangups, and how do you see people getting through those?
So many people are afraid to lose something. They're afraid, what happens if I can't pay the bills? What happens if my kids can't eat? I'm like, that's ridiculous. Not that I want you to go to McDonald's, but you can live off of McDonald's for $9 a day if you needed to. I wouldn't suggest it, but you're not going to starve. I think really down times help you. I think what's going on right now, you're going to read books in 3 years that you go, there was somebody that was really struggling, in April of 2020 that felt lost. And they're going to be on stage 3 years from now as a keynote because of what happened right now. Right.
Right.
When I was 20, or when I was 17, I was just, like I said, I was a loser. I was literally, I'd go to school and I'd meet my friends, and there'd be whiskey behind the school, that instead of going to first period, we would go into the woods and drink whiskey. Right. Obviously a bright future. Right. And one day I was so drunk at school that I hope my mom's not listening, but she knows the story. That we were hanging out, getting pizza, cutting class, and we were on the railroad tracks, and I stood on the railroad tracks, and a train started coming towards me. And I just stood there, and I just stared at it, and it's honking the horn, and my friends start kind of like, after laughing, they start getting real serious. And I remember being so numb, just in terms of either the alcohol or the, just life, because I felt like I was going nowhere. And I didn't move, and it kept coming towards me. And it got really, really close. And then finally, kind of shrugging nonchalantly, I walked off the train. But it wasn't a fear thing. It was kind of like numbness. I lived like that for a couple of years. And then I was 20 years old. This changed my life. I was dating this girl, and she was at the hospital getting her appendix out. And I remember it was my birthday. And I was there to visit her to see how she was doing. And I was like, oh, it's my birthday today. I almost forgot. And her mother was like, it's your birthday. I said, yeah, I'm 20 today. And, and I said something that must have it's a weird thing to say to your girlfriend's mother, like when you first meet her. And I was like, I never thought I'd live this long. And she was like, what? I said, I thought I'd be dead before I was 20. And she was like, really? And we started, and I remember driving home that night in the Meadowbrook Parkway on Long Island and being like, I'm alive at 20. And I said something that changed my life to myself. I said, it's all bonus.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to be here anyway. I said, it's all, but so literally from that point on, maybe not immediately, but that's when I got into photography. That's when there's been nothing to lose. Write a book. Why not? I'm not supposed to be here anyway. So even though
Yeah.
people tell me you're not a writer, you failed out of English, I don't care. I'm going to write a book. And when you do things because it's all bonus, you don't have any fear of losing because it's not supposed to happen anyway. And I think so many people, because of their job or their degree or because of their parents, they hold themselves back because they're supposed to do something and they have expectations on something. And the more I relieve the whole, like, there's no expectations. I'm going to live the life that I want to live. That's when people come back, how do you do all this stuff? Because I don't care. I'm not supposed to do it anyway. If I can give that advice and somebody can run with that, the mission is good.
I felt similarly after the age of 30, where I was like, I had plenty of money and I'd made all the sacrifices, and I was just like, I'm in the bonus area of my life. And for me, I was really afraid for a little while, but that fear started to subside, and that fear actually transformed into this sort of potentiality and this sort of level of surprise that made my life so much richer. And, a lot of people, it's like, if you can sit and you know what kind of the next 5 years of your life is going to look like. And I hate when people are like, where do you want to be in 5 years? I hate those questions so much. And it's just like, like, if I had any idea, like, how boring would that be? And I think that it's tough to make that transition where when you are expecting and you're trying to stay safe, but you realize that so much yet so little is actually at stake. You're right.
Totally.
Your kids aren't going to starve. You can always go back to that job that you hate. It's not like there's always going to be jobs. There's always going to be ways to make money. What there's not going to be is, the opportunity to take this risks or follow your dream while you have the dream. And this is one of the things, I've chatted with my father about this and some others. As you get older, your dreams change. And that's one of those things where if you're like, oh, I'm going to do this in 3 years, I can't wait. A lot of times you'll get there and you won't have that dream anymore, and you'll have lost that entire opportunity to veer off from your life and have done something incredibly amazing. And, it's so hard because all of this just whittles down into what language can we use as writers to help create the conditions for others to wake up and be excited and have the tactical steps to, make change in your life. And, I find that to be the most exhilarating experience of all, because I want everyone to feel the way that I've felt being able to create and share and grow and, feel alive. I think that a lot of it comes back to what makes you feel alive. And so if there's anything in your life that's a friction point, it's like, that's where the juice is, that's where the juice is. Like, if you think you should quit your job, you should quit your job. You know what I mean? And we're so like irrationally afraid. And that's why being around other people who have done it, and, the more that your life kind of looks like someone else's, that's not really a good thing in a lot of instances.
No, I love so much of what you just said, because it really goes back to, 3 years from now, who do you know? Like, how do you know what you're giving it a want? And I hate that question as well. 3 years from now, I want to be alive, and I want to have freedom to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right. I want my family to be alive. I want to be healthy. That's what I want. So, okay, do those things. But in terms of work, I think back to even school, right? 18 years old. What's your major for your college that now you're going to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for? I'm 18. I don't know about you, but there was not a time when I was any dumber in my life than I was 18.
Right.
It was the dumbest time of my life in terms of decisions. I just told you a story. Yeah. You want me at this age to make a decision that's going to affect the rest of my life? Are you insane?
Right.
Now I'm going to do this? Like, because in 3 years from now, I wanted to be a criminal justice major. I literally got arrested while I was a criminal justice major. How ironic that is.
That's so funny.
Criminal justice, hotel, restaurant management, 5 different things. I have no interest in any of those. I only picked it because guidance counselor told me I need to pick something.
Yeah.
Just relax.
I wish my parents or someone would have told me, like, it doesn't really matter what you do until you're about 27 years old. It's just like later, just go do whatever you want to do. Yeah, you're right. Or even later. And, I want to go back to this point that you made, that you don't need a lot to live, because I think that that's probably the most important piece of all of this, is that most of us have so much more control than we realize over the life that we want to live. And it's easier to put off doing kind of that work of figuring out what you want to be and what kind of life you want to live. It's always just easier to chase something else because other people are chasing it. And money is obviously the proverbial thing that we all, kind of grow up wanting and chasing. And, I'd love for you to share. I mean, is it just based on how you grew up, or is it just who you are, or how do you test that? I mean, how do you find kind of the upper and lower bound of a life that makes you happy, or how do you live on less? How do you get used to that?
I think for me, it was experiences like doing the career that I did in terms of the photojournalism world. I got to meet everybody. I got to photograph Muhammad Ali's birthday party. I got to be on the field with Tom Brady, or spend the day with the Dalai Lama, be at mansions of these estates where they're doing these events. I got to be in homeless shelters. I got to be in every church or synagogue you can imagine, meet people of all walks of life, where all the stereotypes that people put out there are untrue. Like there's some things that are true, but you get to see what people are really like, and you get to meet a lot of miserable rich people, and you get to meet a lot of happy poor people, and you realize with not that I don't want the money, because you can do a lot of things that are good, and but I met people that didn't know who their friends were because they had a lot of money. They didn't know who they were going to trust. And so you realize, for me, it was like, that was never a big deal. Like there was almost, I hate to say it, because I hate that whole, like, when you have money, you don't need money. I hate when people say that, because there's people that really need it. But there's a certain point where you don't. There's a certain
it's diminishing return. Yeah.
Without a doubt. And I'd see these people. I remember meeting this one guy, and I was like, oh, I want this life. And he said, why? And I said, well, we're going to have kids, this and that. And he goes, let me tell you something. He goes, I've got this place, and it's gorgeous. And he goes, and I don't see my kids. He goes, my kids don't come around. I've got everything you can imagine, and I'm lonely. And he goes, I wouldn't want this if I were you. He goes, and we're eating the same chicken sandwiches. That's his event, right? So he's got all the money in the world. We're eating the same thing, right? Nothing really, like, he was miserable. And because he put his priority on the wrong stuff, he spent his time working and doing other things instead of being with his family. And now as he got older, it's not like you can't get that back. That's one of the reasons why we homeschool, is like, we want to raise great adults. It's not about raising great test takers. I want kids or adults, when I'm older, that they want to come back. They want to spend time with grandma and grandpa. They're not angry at us because we were so busy doing other stuff that we neglected them. That's way more important to me than the money or the career success. But ironically, by doing that, because we've put such a high priority on that time with those kids, that we are very focused on the work that we do in the most essential way we could possibly do it. So I don't spend a ridiculous amount of time working. I mean, we could pretty much get everything done we need in about 12 hours a week.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So if we want to do more, we can do more. But it doesn't need to be. So we're in the backyard, filling the sand pit. We are going for walks. We're traveling. It allows me to only do the work that I want to do. I don't do any work that I don't want to do anymore. And I spend more time with my kids than with anything. Hopefully, if I'm not a jerk of a dad, they're going to want to hang out with me when they're older. That's what I want. I want to be an awesome grandfather and an awesome great grandfather. So it's that.
Yeah, I love that. But a lot of people, they feel, especially Americans, it's this sort of Protestant work ethic. It's this, you always have to be working. We always have to be creating. How do you get used to working 12 hours a week? Because even myself, like, I don't have to do anything. And I spend most of my time doing very little, or reading, or just flowing like water. But sometimes I feel immense guilt that, I've got to get another podcast out, or, you and I are both writing books right now. And we just mentioned how, like, the fog is kind of lifted and we're feeling more creative again. But did you ever have guilt that you should be working more, or making more money, or building a business?
Let me be clear. Like, I only have to work about 12 hours a week. In terms of, I don't only work 12 hours a week.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. That's important clarification.
Yeah. I mean, I time, like, what do I need to do in terms of the groups that I run, the connections that I have, the content that I have to put out. I do a daily podcast. I do a couple of weekly emails. I do other content for the group, and I get on these calls. About 12 hours it takes me. But I'm always doing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm doing this. Like, I don't consider this part of that 12 hours. Like, this is fun.
Right.
It's all fun to me, but this is bonus. If we didn't do this call, we'd be fine, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
So even writing the book, that's all comes in there. But I get to the freedom of it. Like you said, be like water. I love that phrase. Bruce Lee,
Yeah, exactly.
Water goes to whatever shape you want it to be. So if my kids are with their friends for 4 hours, I could sit down and record 8 podcast episodes or
Mm-hmm.
write the book. But it doesn't mean I ever missed out anymore on what I really want to do with them. So it's being fluid with that. But the more you get financial freedom, the more you do the work that you want to do, the less you need, you can shape it that way. And that's what's so beautiful about freedom to me. So if I need an 80-hour week because I'm going to finish something, I go for it, but I don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. You just roll with the rhythm of life.
Yes.
Because it's so much like a rhythm. Like some weeks you're going to be on, some weeks you're going to be off. And that's the thing. I think there's a real inhumanity, as you know, for the summit, the kind of the kickoff in my talk, I talk about the inhumanity of the life that most Americans are living, and how we're not wired to commute an hour each way each day. And even though you can push through it and you can do it, and some people love it, the data all shows, both statistically and anecdotally, that we're miserable as a country. And that's the root of the problem, is that we're not able to ebb and flow with the rhythms of our life. We're forced into this very regimented structure where we're not in control of our time and not in control of our money. So we're effectively inherently under, someone else's control, especially if you work, for someone else. And it's just, how do you build your lifestyle business? And, people often ask me, sometimes they're like, oh, you work you work so much, when I was writing the book, you work so much. And, my wife will be like, you have no work-life balance. And you hear these all the time. And I was like, I don't want work-life balance. Like this is my life. Like I want to be creatively inspired. And I've said this recently, at the end of the day, when I'm going to sleep, how I measure whether I had a great day was how alive did I feel.
I love that.
How alive did I feel? And that's, for me, that's it. That's it.
It wasn't your checklist, your to-do list.
I don't do to-do lists. I don't set goals. I don't, in my next book, I'm actually going to be quite critical of the traditional personal development, this whole idea that you always have to get better and always have to improve, and that you're already enough as you are, and everything you seek is already within you. This idea that we always have to evolve and improve and get better, I think creates an immense amount of pressure on people's lives, especially, when you realize that you have your own limits, and my limits are going to be different than yours. And that once you realize your own limits, that it in itself creates the conditions for freedom. And so, that's kind of where I'm at, like in my own.
I think that's so needed, though. It's so needed because everybody's like, oh, what's your morning routine? I don't have a morning routine.
Right.
People are like, you don't have a morning routine? I'm like, no, I do not want the first hour of my day scheduled by I love Hal Elrod, but I don't want it scheduled by the things that he says I have to do.
Yeah.
If I want to wake up at 7:30 calmly with my wife, I want to do that. If I wake up because I have inspiration at 5 and I want to go write for 2 hours, I want to do that. Freedom to me is not having a set morning routine that I do every day, or my goal list that I have to get done. So I love that you're going in that area, because I think it's gone too far in that direction.
Yeah. I had James Clear on my podcast, and he was arguing, that habits are the pathway to freedom. And I couldn't disagree more, because I think that a lot of habits that we build in our life, while they can make us more efficient, they actually don't make us feel more alive, because our minds are like little efficient computers that when we're doing something routinized every day, it actually puts us to sleep. We don't pay attention. We don't notice things that are subtle and are happening all around us. And I just love this stuff. I'm so excited about the moment that we're in, simply because it does create the conditions for reflection and waking up. And a lot of people are going crazy. I was going crazy for a little while. Now I've been in quarantine for over 2 months. And, I was laughing because I took my wife, I was like, had such a crazy year last year with the book and the tour and traveling. And she's like, what are your plans for 2020? And I was like, I just want to go to the country and rest. And then this happens. And here I am in the country. I woke up at like 10:15 this morning. And, it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm trying to go with the rhythm. And that doesn't mean that I won't be productive or create something at some point. But, I think a lot of us just, we don't give ourselves permission to do less, or permission to simply be and exist and enjoy. Maybe just enjoy.
We need breaks. I think this is going to be the best thing for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are thinking about their life in the last 6 weeks more than they have in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
they're questioning things. They're wondering why they're doing this. They're like, oh, wait a second, I could be home. Maybe I don't want to do this crappy job anymore, but because maybe we could live on less. Maybe we don't have to live in this place that I haven't heard more people thinking about their lives this much. And I hope it just doesn't go back, like snap back to, oh, get back on the train and life goes back to just that same thing. I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, I think it's like everyone, it's kind of like when you can see and smell freedom, I think some people are also afraid of it. You know, I hear a lot of people that want freedom, and then when they actually get close to it, they can't make the leap simply because they're not comfortable with not knowing.
That's a big thing. Even like, oh, why do you homeschool? There's so many facets to it. But one of the things, I don't want my kids to become just routine based because somebody else told them to do. When the bus shows up at this time, you get on it. You don't question it. What kid is allowed to question getting on the bus? They're not.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah.
What system do you set up to where they could be creating the greatest piece of art at 8:23 in the morning, and a bell rings, and you put it down and you stop, you go do something else? Like, how is that benefiting them? So that's why after 12 to 16 years of that, people go, I can't imagine the life that you're talking about. I have been trained to follow an order, and I need a job or life where I follow an order. So people say to me, like, what's your average day like? What's your normal day life? I'm like, how do you explain that?
Right.
My normal day is different every single day. And I hate even answering that question because it puts me in the box like, oh, well, this day, what's it like with the kids, with the school? Like, well, some days my 8-year-old gets up and he loves taking apart electronics. Every other kid wants new electronics. He wants broken electronics. So he can take it apart and build a little generator. So he might be doing that, or we might go for a walk, or we might do this, but it's not about your routine. And it makes me shake when people say, what's your routine? What's your normal day? And no, it's not. There's no normal day.
Right. Yeah. How bored. I think about back when I had normal days and just how retrospectively boring it was for me. I mean, it's great for some people. My wife just loves that. You know, she was up at 7 a.m. this morning doing yoga and had a whole life before I woke up. And yeah, it's different rhythms for different people at different times. And that's the thing, is I often think, you know, the new us or the new you is trying to show up, but you have to create the conditions for it to show up. And it doesn't just show up if you just work harder and faster and try to always be better and try to hold on too tightly to who you were. I think that's just a lot of life. There's just a lot of fear of just the fact that you realize you're changing, but you don't want to change because inherent in that is uncertainty. And so we just try to hold on so tightly to anything that we can.
And to your point, it's not for everybody. Like, I am not trying to say at all that what we do is right for everybody. What is right for the people that are like, they know they need something like this. It's like, it's not for your wife. It's not for my sister-in-law. Right?
Yeah.
My sister-in-law is not going to watch this interview and she's not going to be inspired by it. It's not what she wants. And that's totally cool. What we've learned, and this is to your business question, the closer you know who it is you're talking to, the more you could say, this is not for you.
Right.
Go to somebody else. You know, go to Grant's wife if you want to learn the schedule, blah, blah, blah. It's not for me. What I'm going to teach you is I'm going to make you think differently if you want this type of life. And everybody else can go. And I'm totally cool with that. And most people are afraid of that because, like, aren't you going to turn people away? Like, of course. Homeschooling, aren't you going to put your kids in a bubble? Everybody's in a bubble. Right. You're in a bubble if you live in New York City. You're in a bubble if you live in Nebraska. You're in a bubble if you go to this church. It's all in a bubble. Get out of the idea that that's a bad thing, or expand your bubble. But no matter what you choose to do, I choose to do this interview with today. It means I'm not doing everything else this hour. And I'm cool with it because this means something to me.
Yeah. The last thing I want to connect with you on is I found such an immense joy. Probably the most joyful thing in my life has been the ability to create and connect with others and be open and share and be vulnerable. And I've done a little bit of coaching. I found the challenge for me, just, you know, hard to scale in some cases. B, I felt like once I got to know individuals, I felt like I cared too much. You know, I was always thinking about them. And, you know, I know there's ways to get out of that, but I think there's something that everyone can learn from being vulnerable and open to people that they don't know and creating a more vulnerability. And it doesn't mean everyone has to go out and be a coach but I think inherent within that is sharing and creating is a richness of life experience. And I'd love, as someone who, coaches and you have these communities, can you share maybe how others can kind of tap into that? I mean, you don't have to be a writer, you don't have to create a blog or a podcast, but I'd love your thoughts on that connection and how connecting with others has or hasn't made your life richer.
Oh, it's amazing when you can like when you can lead. And I think that's the whole thing. I think there's not enough leaders in this world. I really do. I think there's too many followers and not enough leaders. And what happens is, Seth Godin said this wonderfully. He's like, when he talked about tribes, he's like, the Beatles didn't invent teenagers. They just led them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And that's what we kind of learned here was like, I've been in different communities and different groups. And I'm like, I never felt the connection that I wanted to feel. And I basically said, what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people that I want to be around? What kind of people give me energy? What kind of people are the generous ones and the helpful ones? And I said, that's what I want to create. So I literally created around what's the world that I wanted to be in. I didn't do it because of the money. I didn't do it. Obviously I saw the models of what could
Mm-hmm.
happen, in terms of the business, but it really came down to holistically, like, who do I want to be around in this world? So as opposed to, I don't know if everybody has that in them. So either you're going to find a group like that
Mm-hmm.
is your type of people, or go create that group that you want. Well, it could be 4 people. It could be thousands of people. But for me, I know who gives me energy. I know right now, Grant, like, I don't know if this is answering your question, but like when we have this conversation, I could talk like this for hours with you.
I know.
But I tell you, I go down the street to my neighbors, I can't handle 3 minutes with it.
Right.
I can't.
Right.
Because they're gonna complain about their spouse, or they're gonna like, what are we drinking tonight? Or, politics, or like, get out. I don't want to. But then I get into these conversations, like you can sit around a campfire and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, you're still talking.
Yeah.
When I know I have that, whether they're paying me or not, those are the conversations I want to be in. Fortunately, we've been able to create an environment where we do make a good income from it, and we bring those people together with other like-minded people, and they love it. So everybody's like, oh, how do I build this thing? It's like, to me, you're thinking of it wrong. You're thinking of it income first. You're thinking of how do I make my podcast profitable? Stupidest question to me. How about this? Go out and make an awesome podcast that people want to share, and don't worry about stopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I annoy a lot of people because it's like people want to sell you the blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't think you need any of that stuff. I think you can just go do it. And,
No, I love that. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this conversation is when you're trying to build a life that you love, being intentional about what you create. So those that you want to be around and engage with, you have the opportunity to hang with. It's very sort of intuitive, and I love that. I mean, I think one of the biggest joys of doing this is being able to connect with others who are living life on their own terms. And I've got to chat with, some of my favorite authors and thinkers and people, and they're just very alive and very full conversations. The one thing I love is really passionate people, no matter what they're passionate about. And just people who are vulnerable and open. And I don't get that a lot at like cocktail parties, especially ones that, it's like so funny. It's like, wait, what are you about? What do you do? I don't care what they do. They could be like a tax attorney. And if they're passionate about it, I'll get into it. Some of the best conversations I've had recently, one was like a guy that cleans planes for American Airlines. I talked to him for like 4 hours about how you clean planes. And I was all about that. And he was super passionate about it. But man, like, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being on the show and everything that you do, man. I'm so happy to be on this journey with you, and great to connect in this fashion. And, one of the things now that I want to do, we'll put this off in the distant future. I kind of want to create like a renegade business podcast.
Yeah.
Where, it's like, just like have a couple beers and just like be brutally honest about what it's like to be an entrepreneur and how to build a company and a business you love, and just escape the grind. Like that's what I feel like I want to do with you one day. That'd be really fun.
You let me, like I said earlier, I could have that conversation. And the brutally honest part is like, I think people need that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get it. And that's one thing I can't not be. And hopefully I do it with love, but I'm very direct. That my group knows that, my people know that, like, you're going to buckle up. Like when people join, they go, buckle up. This is going to be real, But if you can't handle it, this is not the right group. And if you can handle it, you're going to be tough and you're going to grow and you're going to be appreciative of it. And I tell people all the time, like in terms of like quitting their job, like you will wish you would have done it sooner.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
No, but I don't understand. But by the security and the benefits, you can buy it. You can buy all that stuff if you make enough money. You don't. And they always come back and they go, I remember my friend 10 years ago, he goes, I just said it. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I just said what you told me. I said, I don't even remember. He goes, a year ago, you said, I'm going to wish I did it sooner. I just said to myself, I wish I did it sooner. I'm like, I forgot all about the conversation. I say it so often.
Yeah.
But that's just, you got to be real. You got to be honest about it.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, even when their job's going great, but they feel stuck in their life, I tell them to quit their job. They're like, why would I do that? I worked so hard to get here. And I'm like, well, you're stuck and, just move somewhere else or, pack up and do like shake up your life a little bit. And then you'll really figure out, what you love or what you're passionate about, or leave on good terms. And then you can always go back,
And you'll learn more about yourself then than any other time if you just go status quo.
Absolutely. So Vincent Pugliese, the author of Freelance to Freedom, where can people learn more about you? We're going to have links and everything, but where can they learn more about you?
Most fun thing I'm doing right now besides the group, I do a daily podcast called Total Life Freedom Podcast. We went from freelance to freedom to total life freedom because it's kind of like beyond the freelancing in terms of your whole life. So that's the podcast. That's our business. That's our group, totallifefreedom.com. I recorded the audiobook for Freelance to Freedom. I give it away for free. So anybody in your audience that wants it, totallifefreedom.com/F2F book.
Hope you have a good day. And
Thank you,
tomorrow
Grant.
is different than today. And enjoy your afternoon. Stay safe, and I'll chat with you soon. This episode is brought to you by Policygenius.com. If you have a family that relies on your income, then you should definitely have term life insurance. Unfortunately, less than 10% of millennials have life insurance, and I don't blame them. I've always been personally leery of life insurance salesmen, but thankfully, with companies like Policygenius, you can compare quotes from the top life insurance companies all in one place. So if you're one of the many people looking to buy life insurance right now, but you're not sure where to start, head to Policygenius.com. Policygenius will help you find the best rate and handle the process completely. They'll get you and your family protected and hopefully give you one less thing to worry about. 100% of the proceeds of this episode will be donated to the Food Bank of the Hudson Valley, foodbankofhudsonvalley.org.